Al-Khidr or Al-Khidr is a mystical figure that some believe to be described in the Quran as a righteous servant of God possessing great wisdom or mystic knowledge. In various Islamic and non-Islamic traditions, Khidr is described as a messenger, prophet, wali, or in some cases as a god of the material world. The figure of Al-Khidr has been syncretized over time with various other figures including Vishnu in India, Sorush in Iran, Saint Sarkis the warrior and John the Baptist in Armenia, Saint George in Asia Minor and the Levant, etc. Because of the linguistic similarities and shared etymology between the name Al-Khidr and the Arabic word for green, and the fact that the name of Al-Khidr shares the exact same triliteral root as the word Al-Aqdar, a root found in multiple Semitic languages, meaning green or verdant. The meaning of the name has traditionally usually been taken colloquially and academically to be the green one, or the verdant one. Some contemporary scholars have disagreed with this assessment. However, some others point to a possible reference to the Mesopotamian figure Utnapishtim from the Epic of Gilgamesh through the Arabization of his nickname, Hasisatra. According to one recent view, the name Khidr is not an Arabic variant or an abbreviation of Hasisatra. It directly comes from the name of the Canaanite god Kotharwa Cassis, and it may be later assimilated to Arabic term Al-Aqdar. Quranic Narrative. In Surah 18, ayat 65-82, Moses meets the servant of God, referred in the Quran as one of our slaves whom we had granted mercy from us and whom we had taught knowledge from ourselves. Muslim scholars identify him as Nabi Khidr. Although he is not explicitly named in the Quran and there is no reference to him being immortal or being especially associated with esoteric knowledge or fertility, these associations come in later scholarship on Al-Khidr. The Quran states that they meet at the junction of the two seas and Moses asks for permission to accompany the servant of God so Moses can learn right knowledge of what he has been taught. The servant informs him in a stern manner that their knowledge is of different nature and that, surely you, Moses, cannot have patience with me. And how canst thou have patience about things about which thy understanding is not complete? Moses promises to be patient and obey him, unquestioningly. And they set out together. After they board a ship, the servant of God damages the vessel. Forgetting his oath, Moses says, "Have you made a hole in it to drown its inmates? Certainly you have done a grievous thing." The servant reminds Moses of his warning. "Did I not say that you will not be able to have patience with me?" And Moses pleads not to be rebuked. Next, the servant of God kills a young man. Moses again cries out in astonishment and dismay, and again the servant reminds Moses of his warning. And Moses promises that he will not violate his oath again, and that if he does he will excuse himself from the servant's presence. They then proceed to a town where they are denied hospitality. This time, instead of harming anyone or anything, the servant of God restores a decrepit wall in the village. Yet again Moses is amazed and violates his oath for the third and last time. Asking why the servant did not at least exact some recompense for it, the servant of God replies, "This shall be separation between me and you. Now I will inform you of the significance of that with which you could not have patience. Many acts which seem to be evil, malicious or somber, actually are merciful. The boat was damaged to prevent its owners from falling into the hands of a king who seized every boat by force. And as for the boy, his parents were believers and we feared lest he should make disobedience and ingratitude to come upon them. God will replace the child with one better in purity, affection and obedience." As for the restored wall, the servant explained that underneath the wall was a treasure belonging to two helpless orphans whose father was a righteous man. As God's envoy, the servant restored the wall, showing God's kindness by rewarding the piety of the orphan's father, and so that when the wall becomes weak again and collapses, The orphans will be older and stronger and will take the treasure that belongs to them, reports in the Hadith. Among the strongest transmitted proofs about the life of Al-Khidr are two reports. One narrated by Ahmad ibn Hanbal in Al-Zuhd, whereby Muhammad is said to have stated that Elijah and Al-Khidr meet every year and spend the month of Ramadan in Jerusalem. Citation from Kitab al-Zuhd needed, and the other narrated by Yaqub ibn Sufyan from Umar II, whereby a man he was seen walking with was actually Al-Khidr. Ibn Hajar declared the claim of the first fair and that of the second sound in Fath al-Bari. He goes on to cite another sound report narrated by Ibn Asakir from Abu Zur'a al-Razi, whereby the latter met Al-Khidr twice, once in his youth, the other in old age, but Al-Khidr himself had not changed. Islamic scholar Bediüzzaman said Nursi also contends that Khidr is alive. He says he is alive, but there are 5 degrees of life. He is at the 2nd degree of life. It is because of this that some religious scholars have been doubtful about it. Khidr and Ilyas, which is free to an extent. That is to say, they can be present in numerous places at the same time. They are not permanently restricted by the requirements of humanity like us. They can eat and drink like us when they want to, but are not compelled to be like we are. The saints are those who uncover and witness the realities of creation, and the reports of their adventures with Khidr are unanimous and elucidate and prove this level of life. There is even one degree of sainthood which is called the degree of Khidr. A saint who reaches this degree receives instruction from Khidr and meets with him. But sometimes the one at that degree is mistakenly thought to be Khidr himself. Al-Khidr is believed to be a man who has the appearance of a young adult but a long, white beard. According to some authors like Abdul Haq Vidyarthi, Al-Khidr is Xerxes, who disappeared after being in the lake regions of Sistan that comprise the wetlands of the Irano-Afghan border today, and after finding the fountain of life, sought to live his entire remaining life in service of God and to help those in their path. Journey to him. Muhammad al-Bukhari reports that Al-Khidr got his name after he was present over the surface of some ground that became green as a result of his presence there. There are reports from al-Bayhaqi that Al-Khidr was present at the funeral of Muhammad and was recognized only by Ali from amongst the rest of the companions, and where he came to show his grief and sadness at the death of Muhammad. Al-Khidr's appearance at Muhammad's funeral is related as follows. A powerful-looking, fine-featured, handsome man with a white beard came leaping over the backs of the people till he reached where the sacred body lay. Weeping bitterly, he turned toward the companions and paid his condolences. Ali said that he was Khidr. In another narration, Al-Khidr met with Ali by the Kaaba and instructed him about a supplication that is very meritorious when recited after the obligatory prayers. It is reported by Imam Muslim that during the time when the false Messiah appears and as he approaches at the outskirts of the city of Medina, a believer would challenge him, whom the false Messiah will slice into 2 pieces and rejoin, making it appear that he caused him to die and be resurrected. To which this man would proclaim the falsehood of the Dajjal, who would try again to kill him but would fail, and thus his weakness and inability being made revealed. According to the commentators and transmitters of this narration, the person who will challenge the Antichrist and humiliate him will be Al-Khidr. Islamic Perspectives. In Shia Islam, many Shia Muslims believe Al-Khidr accompanied the 12th Imam, Muhammad al-Mahdi, in meeting one Sheikh Hassan ibn Mudli Jamkarani. on the 22nd of February 984 CE and instructing him to build a mosque at that site of their meeting, known as Jamkaran. The site, 6 kilometers east of Iran, has been a pilgrimage destination for the Shia for some time. In the last few years, however, it has become very popular, particularly with young people, and drawn crowds of tens of thousands. In Ismailism, al-Qa'id are considered as one of the permanent imams, that is, those who have guided people throughout history. In Sufism to Sufis, al-Qa'id holds a distinguished position. Although amongst the Sunni scholars there is a difference of opinion about him being still alive, amongst Sunni Sufis there is almost a consensus that al-Qa'id is still alive, with many respected figures and sheikhs and prominent leaders claiming having had personal encounters with him. Examples of those who have claimed this are Abdul Qadir Gilani, al-Nawawi, Ibn Arabi, Sidi Abdulaziz ad-Dabbur and Ahmad ibn Idris al-Fasi. Ibn Atta al-Layturi Falmanin states that there is consensus among the Sufis that al-Qa'id is alive. In fact, there are orders that claim origin with al-Qa'id himself, or that al-Qa'id was part of their chain. For example, some of the Naqshbandi Akani Sufi order, the Muhammadiyya, the Adriyya, and the Senusara Tariqat that had al-Qa'id as one of the central figures connecting them to the spiritual outflow of Muhammad. In Sufi tradition, al-Qa'id has come to be known as one of those who receive illumination direct from God without human mediation. He is the hidden initiator of those who walk the mystical path, like some of those from the Uwaisi Tariqa. Uwaisis are those who enter the mystical path without being initiated by a living master. Instead, they began their mystical journey either by following the guiding light of the teachings of the earlier masters or by being initiated by the mysterious prophet Saint al-Qa'id. Al-Qa'id has had thus gained enormous reputation and popularity in the Sufi tradition due to his role as an initiator. Through this way come several Sufi orders which claim initiation through al-Qa'id and consider him their master. Al-Qa'id had thus come to symbolize access to the divine mystery itself. In the writings of Abd al-Karim al-Jili, al-Qa'id rules over the men of the unseen, the exalted saints and angels. Al-Qa'id is also included among what in classical Sufism are called the Abdal. In Sufi hierarchy, Abdal is a mysterious rank. It is thought in Sufism that God decides who will be Abdal for a decade before an Abdal is born. Adbals are thought as the gainers of mysterious power, that is, knowing the future, also called ilm-i-laduni. They are deployed to protect Islam from some unwanted evil activities that threaten the existence of Islam. In a divinely instituted hierarchy of such saints, al-Qa'id holds the rank of their spiritual head. The Sri Lankan Sufi Bawa Mahari of Deen gives a unique account of al-Qa'id. Al-Qa'id was on a long search for God, until God, out of his mercy, sends the Archangel Gabriel to guide him. Gabriel appears to al-Qa'id as a wise human sage, and al-Qa'id accepts him as his teacher. Gabriel teaches al-Qa'id much in the same way as al-Qa'id later teaches Moses in the Quran, by carrying out seemingly unjust actions. Al-Qa'id repeatedly breaks his oath not to speak out against Gabriel's actions, and is still unaware that the human teacher is actually Gabriel. Gabriel then explains his actions, and reveals his true angelic form to al-Qa'id. Al-Qa'id recognizes him as the Archangel Gabriel, and then Gabriel bestows a spiritual title upon al-Qa'id, by calling him Hayat Nabi, the eternal life prophet. The French scholar of Sufism, Henry Corbin, interprets al-Qa'id as the mysterious prophet, the eternal wanderer. The function of al-Qa'id as a person archetype is to reveal each disciple to himself, to lead each disciple to his own theophany. because that theophany corresponds to his own inner heaven, to the form of his own being, to his eternal individuality. Accordingly, Al-Khidr is Moses' spiritual guide, who initiates Moses into the divine sciences, and reveals to him the secret mystic truth. In Ahmadiyya identifies Al-Khidr to be the symbolic representation of Muhammad himself. Ahmadis believe that the Quranic passage of Moses' encounter with the servant of God is closely linked, contextually, to the subject matter of Surah Al-Kahf, in which his story or parable is cited. According to Ahmadi exegesis on Al-Kahf, which draws upon external and internal, religious and historical evidence, to show that Moses' journey towards, and his experience with the servant of God, was not physical but by way of vision, similar to the Miraj of Muhammad, the righteous servant of God, otherwise known as Al-Khidr, is not believed to be a historical figure but rather a symbolic figure who signifies the person of Muhammad whom Moses had desired to see and whom he saw in this vision. Muhammad has been called the servant of God in many places within the Quran and is believed to be the servant of God par excellence who has been called a mercy to the whole world. He is also believed to have been vouchsafed divine knowledge in a very large measure. The place of the meeting of the two seas signifies the time when the Mosaic dispensation meets the Islamic dispensation, i.e., when the Judaic dispensation will be superseded by the Islamic one. The first action of the servant of God, of making a hole in the boat, is interpreted as signifying the commandments laid down by Muhammad, which would, as it were, make a hole in the boat, which in spiritual terms denotes worldly riches, i.e., he would see to it that wealth is fairly distributed and does not accumulate in the hands of a few. The poor people, to whom the boat belonged, represent the Muslims, and making a hole in it means that Islam would exhort its followers to spend in the way of God by way of zakat and charity that would seem to be a source of economic weakness, but in fact would be one of economic strength and prosperity. The tyrant king who confiscates the boats were the Byzantine and Persian empires, who would have seized Arabia had it not seemed to them a poor and barren land not worth conquering. The youth is interpreted as ignorance, strength and wild impulses, thus the second action of the servant of God. The killing of the youth signifies that the teachings of his religion would require its followers to bring about a veritable death over their carnal desires and passions. The source of these carnal desires, impulses and passions is the human body and soul combined, from which all moral qualities spring. Islamic theology holds that every human is born virtuous, thus because his parents have been called believers. This means that the believers may be dragged into vice by the impulses represented as the youth. Islam seeks to eradicate these impulses and leaves man with the soul and body combined to develop along beneficent lines to achieve the high purpose of human life. Then Moses and the servant of God approach a town, ask its people for food and are refused to be accepted as guests. This signifies that both Moses and Muhammad would seek cooperation from Jews and Christians, but it would be denied. The two orphan boys to whom the wall belonged are Moses and Jesus, and their righteous father is Abraham. Their treasure was the true teaching bequeathed by them to their peoples, which was in danger of being lost due to the latter's irreligiousness. Thus the third act of the servant of God, of rebuilding the wall, signifies that the treasure or true teachings were to be safeguarded in the Quran, so that they may accept it after having awakened to a realization of the truth of the Quranic teachings. In Zoroastrianism, there are many figures in Iran who Khidr took their places by the Islamization process. One of them is paradoxically a female figure, Anahita. It is clear from a shrine in Yazd. Among the Zoroastrians, for the pilgrims to Yazd, the most important of the 6 pirs is Pir-e Sabz. It is still a functional temple and the holiest site for present-day Zoroastrians living in Iran. Each year from 14 to 18 June, many thousands of Zoroastrians from Iran, India and other countries make a pilgrimage to Yazd in Iran to worship at a hillside grotto containing the sacred spring dedicated to Pir Sabz. Here the worshippers pray for the fertilizing rain and celebrate the greening of nature and the renewal of life. It generally refers to the sacred meal made from wheat, barley or lentil sprouts ceremoniously consumed in honor of Pir Sabz. In Persian the term Sabz means green, and Pir means shrine, among the Zoroastrians of Iran. The name of the shrine derives from the greenness of the foliage growing around the sanctuary. It is actually known Pir Sabz Banu, the old woman in the mountain, or Chek, but also Pir Sabz, the green saint, because Pir means also elder in Persian. As Baba Yan says, Khizr is related to the Zoroastrian water goddess Anahita, and some of her former sanctuaries in Iran were rededicated to him.